The Root of Addiction and the Path to Healing. Inspired by Gabor Maté. We live in an age of silent suffering. Behind the bright lights of success, productivity, and social media smiles, millions of hearts ache quietly, seeking comfort in habits that promise relief but deliver emptiness. Addiction, in all its forms, has become the hidden wound of our time. Dr. Gabor Maté, physician, author, and soul healer, invites us to look at addiction through a compassionate and revolutionary lens. He teaches that addiction is not a moral failure or a genetic curse, but a response to pain, an attempt to find balance in a world that has forgotten how to nurture human connection. This question opens a door to self-understanding. It asks us not to condemn, but to listen. Not to run from our wounds, but to approach them with gentleness, because every addiction hides a story of disconnection, longing, and survival. Addiction as a cry of the soul. No one wakes up and decides to become addicted. Addiction is not born from pleasure. It is born from pain. It begins when something within us breaks, when love turns distant, when safety disappears, when we feel unseen or unloved. In those moments of silent despair, the mind seeks an escape. Substances, screens, food, shopping, work, all offer a fleeting illusion of control. For a brief moment, they numb the storm inside, but soon, they deepen the emptiness they promise to fill. Addiction, then, is not the enemy. It is a messenger, a signal that something deeper within us longs to be healed. It is the shadowed doorway through which our wounded self cries for compassion. Childhood wounds and emotional disconnection. According to Maté, the roots of addiction reach back to childhood. A baby is born needing two things to thrive: attachment and authenticity. Attachment is the bond that makes the child feel safe and loved. Authenticity is the ability to be true to oneself, to express feelings, desires, and pain openly. But for many, these needs collide. When expressing anger or sadness risks losing the love of caregivers, the child unconsciously chooses attachment over authenticity. The result is a painful compromise. The child learns to suppress emotions to maintain connection. Over time, this emotional suppression becomes a pattern. The child grows into an adult who no longer knows how to feel. The body carries the memory of what the heart could not express. And when that pain becomes unbearable, addiction appears as a way to self-soothe. Thus, the root of addiction is not weakness, it is disconnection. A desperate attempt to find externally what was lost internally: love, safety, and peace. It's not the problem, it's the symptom. Our culture teaches us to fight symptoms instead of understanding causes. We treat addiction as a battle to be won, rather than a story to be heard. But as Maté reminds us, the addiction itself is not the real problem. It is the visible expression of an invisible wound. Every addictive behavior, whether toward substances, relationships, success, or approval, has one purpose: to relieve pain, to make life bearable for a few hours. Yet, by rejecting the behavior without addressing the underlying trauma, we reject the very part of ourselves that is trying to survive. Healing does not come from punishment, but from compassion. We do not overcome addiction by hating it, we overcome it by listening to what it is trying to tell us. A sick society, the myth of normal. Maté extends his vision beyond individuals to the world we live in. He calls our modern culture the myth of normal. We have built societies that worship success but neglect empathy, that value productivity but ignore emotional truth. We live surrounded by noise, screens, deadlines, and demands, yet we are starved for genuine connection. In such an environment, addiction is not an exception, it is a natural response to a culture that constantly disconnects us from our own humanity. The rise in anxiety, depression, and compulsive behaviors is not a sign of weak individuals, but of a broken collective consciousness. We are not sick people in a healthy world. We are sensitive souls reacting to a world that has forgotten how to love. Attachment and authenticity, the lost balance. Every human being longs for two essential experiences, to be loved and to be true to oneself. When love and truth coexist, we grow whole. But when they clash, we sacrifice authenticity for belonging. This is the wound that lies at the heart of addiction. The addict is not chasing pleasure, they are chasing connection, freedom, and authenticity. They are searching for the feeling of being home, of being accepted without conditions. To heal, we must restore that lost balance. We must learn again how to love ourselves without having to betray who we are. The doorway to healing. Healing begins the moment we replace judgment with understanding. The addict does not need condemnation. They need compassion. And compassion begins when we recognize that every destructive behavior once served a purpose. It was a way to survive unbearable feelings. Compassion does not mean allowing harm. It means seeing the human behind the habit, the story behind the behavior. It means saying, I see your pain, and I will not turn away. In this light, recovery is not about fighting ourselves. It's about embracing the parts of us that were once rejected. Shame feeds addiction. Love dissolves it. The return to presence. Trauma pulls us away from the present moment. It traps us between what happened and what might happen again. We live in survival mode, disconnected from our bodies, emotions, and inner stillness. Healing is the art of coming back home to the present. It begins when we dare to sit in silence, to feel what we once avoided, and to breathe through pain instead of escaping it. The body is not our enemy. It is the map back to wholeness. Each sensation, each emotion, is a message from the soul inviting us to listen. Presence is the medicine that allows us to transform suffering into wisdom. The spiritual dimension of healing. Maté often speaks of spirituality not as religion, but as connection. The remembrance that we are part of something greater than ourselves. Addiction, in its essence, is a search for that lost connection, a longing for transcendence, belonging, and love. When people reconnect with their spiritual essence, whether through prayer, meditation, nature, music, or service, they begin to feel whole again. They discover that the peace they were chasing externally has always lived within. True spirituality does not deny pain. It transforms it. It turns wounds into wisdom, darkness into light. When we rediscover our divine essence, addiction loses its power, because we no longer feel empty. Healing is not about erasing the past, it's about transforming it. The same energy that once drove addiction can become a force for creativity, empathy, and love. When we allow pain to teach us instead of destroy us, suffering becomes a sacred teacher. Many people who have walked through addiction emerge with a new sense of purpose. They become healers, guides, and voices of compassion for others still in pain. Their scars become symbols of strength, reminders that even the deepest wounds can give birth to light. As Maté says, the essence of trauma is disconnection, and the essence of healing is reconnection. Every act of love, every moment of awareness, every tear released in truth, all are steps on the path of returning home to ourselves. Rediscovering the authentic self. To heal from addiction is to rediscover, who we truly are. It is to remember the child within who once sought love and learned to hide to survive. Healing whispers. You no longer have to hide. You are safe now. Authenticity is freedom. When we reclaim our truth, when we allow ourselves to feel, to speak, to dream, and to be, the need for escape fades. The world becomes livable again, not because it changed, but because we have awakened. The journey from addiction to authenticity is a sacred return, a resurrection of the self that was never truly lost, only forgotten. From disconnection to wholeness. Addiction is not the end of the story. It is a doorway, a painful but sacred invitation to heal the disconnection within. The question is not, how do I stop this behavior? But, what pain am I trying to soothe? When we listen with compassion, when we embrace our vulnerability instead of hiding it, we begin to see that healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who we were before the pain. The path of healing is not linear. It is messy, human, and holy. It requires courage to face the darkness, and faith to trust that light still exists. And when we find that light, not outside, but within, we realize that we were never broken, only disconnected. Addiction is a story of separation. Healing is a story of reunion, the reunion of body, mind, heart, and spirit. So, if you are walking through pain, remember this truth. You are not broken. You are healing. You are returning home to yourself. Gabor Maté said, "The wound is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. The light you seek is already within you. The moment you stop running from your pain, you begin to walk toward your freedom."